So this is part of the KFTV Spaceship Institute, and it's a broadcast to indicate where science meets the soul of man for peace. This is a presentation of the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute. We are teaching plasma science. We are on the basic insight level. The subject today is witness. My name is Alexander. I'm from Canada. It is February 20th, 2022. This is a presentation of the Keshe Foundation North America Plasma Education Series.
And you're teaching on witness today, Alex?
Witness, yes, sir.
Okay.
So I just want to emphasize that although we are in the basic insights, this is a continuation of different stages of teaching, because I've tried to pattern this teaching for everyone, whether they are new or whether they are mature students. And so I've tried to set up a progression of basic terminology, understanding, knowing, and now insight, where we get to start to use all the knowledge that we have accumulated. And the subjects that I have been putting forward are complementary to the teachings of the Keshe Foundation Knowledge Seekers Workshops. And we're all going through this phase. And as part of this basic insight, we did discuss beauty pageants and self-consumption. And we have a serious problem on the physicality, and that is being a witness. And the thing about being a witness is that you could be a witness, let's say, for someone signing a document. So you would be a witness to a signature. You could be a witness to an accident. You could be a witness to an event. Or you could be a witness to a crime. And there are complications that arrive from being such a witness. And in some cases, people don't like witnesses because witnesses witness the dirt that's swept under the carpet. So the reality that we're facing is that there's no carpet to sweep anything under, because everything that we do is witnessed by the universe. So we are talking about the physicality of being a witness and how that is an inhibitor to our progress. So let's begin. And we are on a countdown here. T minus 105 days, launched to the moon on June the 6th, 2022. And of course, we're on another countdown, T minus 48 hours to February 22nd, 2022. A very special day indeed. So stand by to witness greatness. As we've always said, when we try and link the source to the soul in outer space, we don't know if it's backwards. Does the soul link to the source, or the source link to the soul? Or is it upside down? And in many ways, although we know which way is down on this planet, our society in many ways is upside down. And how do we navigate through this? And so one of the nice things about witnessing what's going on here is to see the progression, to be part of it. On the other hand, to be witness to it can be very hurtful to the soul. How hurtful it is dependent on our decisions. So one of those decisions is to be a teacher. But a teacher sometimes has to become a student. And the student then can become a teacher. In either case, there's a following, and we have to follow a leader. And now we have to add another criteria, and that is we have to follow a moral leader. And there's reasons for that. So as we go into the uncharted skies, we find that we're getting out of balance a little bit. We're not sure what we can hear. We're actually not even sure what we're seeing is believable. We're trying to sort it out. And my God, seas are really getting rough. So I want to thank everybody for being here, because what we need to do is to tune in to the reality of the universe, turn on to its power, and drop out of our physical limitations. And so fundamentally, and I repeat because we changed the context. So the context is meaningful. So when we talk about the creation of the universe, it exists from energy. And energy is always in motion. And so therefore that energy is always positive. But we say that energy is positive or negative, which indicates a charge. So energy has a charge because it determines its motion. And when we have a convergence of energy, we call that a maggrav. And so on the cover of book number 1, we see the combination of the field forces coming together to create one field force. And this is part of the universal order of creation. And it is also the creation of matters. And then once we have a matter, it's not alone. There are always other matters. And so there's an interaction. And what we have learned in some of our teachings about the infinity loop. But how does that infinity loop work? And how does it work within a dimension? And how does it transcend dimensions? Basic rule, the higher strength feeds the weaker strength. This is completely backwards with respect to the way our society operates. In our society, we prey on the weaker. We don't feed the weaker. And so we have found an interesting situation in Ottawa, where for the past 3 weeks, the weaker, the hungry, the homeless have been fed by those who had higher strength. This is an anomaly. It's an anomaly in our physicality, but it's normal plasma rule. And this is how the universe works. And so we are witness to this. And in it, as we can see clearly, that there's a point of conflict. When two fields rotate in opposite directions, when they come in contact, that is a conflict point. And so the question becomes, what happens at that conflict point? And can that conflict point exist and continue to exist? Or does something have to change? And so we have many examples which teach us how this conflict resolution takes place. We are still having trouble understanding the attraction and repulsion of magnetical field forces. It doesn't get any simpler than this. It's a two-way street. But as you drive on a two-way street, you understand that you're driving from somewhere to somewhere. And so that point is a maggrav position. And that where you're going to is also a maggrav position. And so if we are increasing energy, we are giving. It's called magnetical giving. It's called emission. If we are increasing our energy and taking from another maggrav, that's called gravitational. That's called taking. And in the process of taking, that is absorption. So the description of natural creation or natural decay in some ways is unfortunate, because the natural creation is in both directions. But when we say natural decay, that means a reduction in field strength. So that is a scientific term. But we know as a scientific term that we have, as we drive on the street, sometimes we may accidentally run over an animal. And what we notice is that within 9 days, that animal disappears. So something happens to decay that physicality. And so that particular maggrav decays. But that energy that is within that maggrav, therefore has to dissipate, has to go somewhere. It has to be emitted. And unfortunately, if we're too physically dependent, we can't see where it goes. So in the plasma science, we see where it goes. It goes as a PM tick. And so a PM tick is a product of the decay process. The PM tick is a maggrav. The PM tick is a maggrav of a different field strength. And there are different field strengths. So basic field strengths we call a neutron, electron, and a proton. And in basic science, we say a neutron has a mass, and it's almost equal to the combination of the electron and the proton mass. But we have to fudge the difference. And this is where physical science has fallen down. If we take into the account the mass of the PM tick, we're starting to balance the equation. And so that is the essence of energy in motion. It is always seeking a balance. So the balance is between a natural decay and a natural creation. But if something is created, and it is created from something, then that something that it is created from is a natural decay. So regardless, if there's an elevation of energy or there's a reduction of energy as represented by the plasma field, in both cases, it is a natural decay that is transformed into a natural creation. So something is always something as opposed to something else. So in this case, if there is an increase in energy, then that it becomes a natural creation to a higher level. But if there's a decrease in energy, that becomes a natural creation to a lower level. And the difference between the higher level and the lower level is a bonding point, which science has not been really able to identify. And so we've had to fudge that also. So this bonding point is a fudge factor because it's invisible. But as science, and we always say, the conservation of energy means that if we look at the energy exchange from the top half of this picture versus the energy exchange from the bottom half of this picture, we see that there is an energy exchange from the neutron that exchanges with an electron and a proton. And that would be part of the creation. But if it's part of the decay, the same thing happens. A neutron will decay and exchange energy with an electron and also exchange energy with a proton. So how does it maintain the connection? So there is an exchange of energy between the two fields. And we haven't determined the direction of flow because we haven't determined the field strength. So if the higher field strength feeds the weaker field strength, in this case here, we don't know which one is which. So the possibility is that the higher neutron feeds to the lower electron-proton combination. But likewise, the lower neutron feeds to the higher electron-proton combination. And as this is a balance of fields, this becomes a maggraph. And if this is a maggraph, then technically it's in balance. And if it is in balance, there's no energy flow. However, we are not taking into account the release of the PM ticks. So therefore, in order for this to maintain its maggraph, because energy is always in motion, there has to be some way for the energy to come in, and there has to be some way for the energy to go out. And there has to be some way for the energy to be retained in the maggraph condition. So this is what's going on in the cups of life. And it becomes even more important now to focus on what is going on inside these cups of life. Because not only does it affect each and every one of us personally, but we become part of the community. And as knowledge seekers, at this point in time, we are in the minority. And we have been witness to the benefits of the cup of life. And we have been witness in our physicality. And that is a lower energy field. So witness that you have created a magnetical and a gravitational field in cup number 1. You have to witness that you can create other cups. You can see that there are differences in the field strength of these different cups. And depending on the purpose, if it is for our pandemic problem, keep the batches at least 1 meter apart, because that takes care of the majority part of the field strength. But there is a link between these two fields, and that link is not visible, but you know that it's there. You don't necessarily see it in the cups, but you can certainly sense it in how you personally feel. And in addition to this gift that we have with the cups of life, we not only have the emotional zinc and the physical copper, but we have the connection to our planet with the CO2 and the edification, the spine building, the bone building of the calcium, and the protein building of the amino acid. And of course, the currency of life on this planet, water. And again, the interaction is not visible. But again, this only takes into account 3 elements within this cup of life. And clearly there are more than 3 elements. So we find that when we put all the cups together, there's a cup of the soul, there's a cup of inertia, and there's a cup of the earth. And so fundamentally, the extremes are the cup of the soul and the cup of the earth. And everything else is in between. And where in between it is determined by field strength. And it is this field strength which determines its positioning. So the gravitational field strength is the strongest. The magnetical field strength is the weakest in a particular field. Overriding this is the soul. So in fact, the soul is the strongest. So within each cup, we have a magnetical gravitational field relationship. And overriding it within each cup is the soul. So the soul is consistent. The magnetical gravitational relationship is variable. And therefore, when you put all the cups together, because you are now including the magnetical gravitational relationship of each and every cup, you have now introduced multiple characteristics which create multiple variables. And this is, we call this the spice of life. And we know this is true because there are over 7 billion people on this planet, and each of us is different. And there are over 70 trillion cells in each body, and each cell is different. And so if a cell needs to be replaced, it's a good thing the cell from the toes don't go to the nose. It wouldn't look good, and it probably wouldn't smell good. But that's just a joke. What we're looking at is a dynamic transfer state that goes to a specific destination state. And so our body is continually taking target practice. But because of physical limitations, we are diminishing in energy. And that energy has to be supplemented by what we're doing on this planet, because that's all we knew. That's all we were allowed to know. And we were kept in a state of ignorance. So ignorance is really to be unaware. But ignorance is also to be aware, but be unwilling. That's really ignorant. It's hard enough when the bridge is out. You can't cross the bridge. But if the bridge is there, maybe you don't know how to cross the bridge. But if the bridge is there and you don't want to cross the bridge, that state of ignorance becomes a state of corruption. And so if we want to deal with that, we have to understand that the time has come to get dirty. And that doesn't mean to be dirty. That means clean up. Because the truth is coming. And so another state that we had was the United States of emergency. And that was the pandemic, which we have had for the last 2 years. And we've had mudslides and flooding and tornadoes. And then the worst thing of all, trucker convoys. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You see, we've come to another state, a state of embarrassment. And my point is this: the truckers have woken up. And I'm really glad. It's just taken 2 years. Because they have, during this pandemic, seen themselves as providers. They are the heroes that are providing our society with the essential services, essential products. But the truckers have discovered that it's a non-exclusive provider, because even the janitor in the hospital is providing for his family. He provides with a broom. He doesn't provide with a big rig, you know, that is $150,000 to $250,000. And as the truckers were faced with the same problem that the rest of us were, they found a surprise. They found a surprise in support. So what became a trucker's problem, and what became for them victimization, they found that they were not exclusive victims. They discovered that, hey, the rest of us are also victims. And so they had a surprise in the support that they got. So the truckers' convoy became more than what it started out with. And then there was another surprise, a success surprise. when they realized that their schemes originally were too small. And as they gathered energy, the schemes started to enlarge. And then the surprise was that an unplanned goal was achieved. An unplanned scheme was fulfilled. And that scheme, again, non-exclusive. You can't participate in this universe exclusively. This universe is interdependent, not exclusive. And the reason the truckers were successful was because they chose freedom, love, and peace as the three watchwords. And speaking of watching, something has happened, and the whole world is watching. And so we've come into a state of sadness. And that state of sadness has shown undesired results. I'm broadcasting from Canada. We are now a rogue state. Parliament has been suspended. So in fact, we are lawless here. The confiscation of assets is part of the protocol. This is not new information. We have assumed this for the longest period of time through the history of the country, through the manifestations of our society. What is sad is that the opportunity to correct these flaws has been lost. And so our assumptions have been confirmed. They are no longer assumptions. And to add to the sadness, I wanted to add the passing and honoring the passing of Victor Vicente Gasquet to this presentation, because he was the embodiment of freedom, love, and peace. And my personal involvement with him, as many of you know, I have done classes in the Spanish community, or the Hispanic community, I'm sorry. And Victor was one of the key members who made this happen. And I'm really grateful. He was there for every one of the classes. The thing that I was disappointed with was that he was the lone member from Spain. The rest of the strong Hispanic community came from so many different countries. But he was basically a lone voice. And so in many ways, in my mind, I'm thinking it's possible that he got tired of carrying the load for Spain. But in another sense, this could be a omen that his mission has been accomplished. And my only sadness is that in another 48 hours, he might have crossed the finish line with us. But you know what? He has done his job as the best as he can. And I am personally grateful for his contribution to making the Hispanic community as strong as it is. It is a very, very powerful community. And we are all witness to that, as the Spanish or Hispanic community is part of the North American team. Very much so. But with this state of sadness, the whole world is a witness. And what does that mean? What does that do for us? So let's explore that. So this bond that we were talking about, this unseen energy that we were talking about, and we call it PM ticks. We can't see it, we can't measure it. So we have to fudge its strength. But we know that it's strong. And the truckers understand this. They call it radar love. Emotions from afar, coming from above. Driving all night. We are witnesses of time through the
Alex,
ages.
could you repeat, please, the last two sentences?
The truckers,
Los camioneros,
yes, they know
ellos
Yes.
saben,
because they call it radar love.
porque le llaman amor de radar.
Should I mute your microphone, Alenka?
Oh, yes,
I'll do
I'm
it,
sorry.
no problem.
It comes from above. Driving all night. Hands wet on the wheel. So there's a connection that we have with time through the ages. And as we study our history, even though we were not there, we were witness. There's one thing that history does show is it shows the conduct of the past. The problem with the history is how truthful it is. And so as we witness the truth of the various histories around the world, we start to discern what is the real truth. So for instance, the major societies in the world all remember the flood. The story is the same, despite the fact that the language is different. So there must have been a flood. But we look at the history of some countries and it doesn't make sense. So we have to understand that the neighbor is a witness to this history. And the neighbor has his own history. So when we compare the history of the neighbor, we can determine the true story. And even then, there are other ways to connect, because what we're talking about, our history, is only what we see in our physicality. And so we become witnesses to yesterday. and we become witnesses to his story. But we are also witnesses to our own story. And we are witnesses to what's going on in the present. And so when we connect what we saw yesterday and we see what is happening today, we can in fact see what will happen in the future. And the truth about being the witness is when we go along to get along. And what does that mean? That means being a silent witness. Do we have to be a vocal witness in all cases? No. But we need to be a witness for our own benefit. Our own benefit is our moral maturity. Our own benefit is our own moral contribution. It's our own moral connection to the creation. I don't know which word is key. Moral or creation. Take your pick. But, you know, we have media. And we have, in Canada, we have a public broadcast media. We pay for it. We also have a private broadcast media. Advertisers pay for that. There is a difference between the public and the private broadcast media. But what happens when in both cases, they both become propaganda broadcast media? So in other words, the media is a witness. But there's a conflict of interest. And so there's a tendency towards secrecy. And then there are agendas. So you create political parties. And sometimes political parties have conflict of philosophies. And today, regardless of which political party in Canada, they all go along to get along. And the reality is, there is nothing they can do about it. Last week was a Super Sunday of is taking part in other countries. So some in the US were having tailgate parties, but others were creating special events. And so the question becomes, which party were you a witness to? Where were you in history at that moment in time? And one of the reasons we like our sporting events is because they're competition. And at these sporting events, we always sing the national anthem of the teams involved. And that becomes an event. And so we were singing the national anthem in Ottawa at a non-sporting event. At the base of a monument to history. And none of us were old enough to be there. But we are witnesses to history because it is manifested physicality in the statue that you're seeing here. And we are all witnesses to what they went through. And we know that it was horrific. How would they feel if they were witness to what was going on today? This is where witnessing yesterday and witnessing today is our witnessing of what the future plays. Fundamentally, when two forces come together, they create another. The energy is abundant in the universe. The harvesting of this energy is self-enhancement. Each of us is a maggraph. Each of us has a balanced energy field. Each of us exchanges energy with the universe. And each of us exchanges energy with other plasma fields. When those plasma fields are other beings, whether they be vertical people or horizontal people, or the human kind of horizontal people like us, when we harvest that energy, that is called loosh harvesting. And loosh harvesting can be in two forms. One, I can steal energy from you. And two, you can steal energy from yourself. Interestingly, the byproduct of you stealing from yourself is self-consumption. And interestingly, the byproduct of stealing energy from someone else requires energy to maintain. So in the process of stealing energy at the expense of someone else is another kind of self-consumption. This is the essence of the exchange of plasma energy. And so we all say, well, we're looking for the greater oneness. And what does it mean to look for that greater oneness? So a maggrav is a unit, but that maggrav has a magnetical and a gravitational force field. So the actual exchange of energy is beyond the maggrav. It's the residue. The maggrav itself is a magnetical gravitational collection. And it exists through the attraction and repulsion of energy. The gravitational kind of energy is converged into the backgraph. The magnetical energy is diverged from the backgraph. We did not say which dimension. We did not say which range within the dimension. All we're saying is that each one of us has a free will, which is giving us the independence. And that independence makes us variable. And this is where we are each one. But each plasma field is interdependent on another plasma field because the plasma fields need to position themselves. So therefore, somehow, some way, each one has to reach one. And there's a limitation on how effective you are physically. So how do you get to move these big rigs? There has to be a driver. How do you get the driver to move the big rig? There has to be an emotional transformation. And what is the goal? And so what the truckers have found out is that as an independent variable, each one can interdepend itself with another trucker and reach one and connect to the population across the country emotionally. And we each teach one. And this is the embodiment of one nation, one planet, one universe. So the basic construct is an X and Y axis. The rotation is the transmission. The trucks run on wheels. These wheels are turning. And that's how they go from one place to another. The mission, the goal, is the transition. You start somewhere and you finish somewhere. That's the transition. That's only 2 dimensions. So at some point, somewhere, there is a crossover point. Because we find that the picture is incomplete. So we understand that when we have a mission, this is our target practice. But what instigates the mission? And so we find that there's an emotion. And this emotion is a co-creation. So the truckers were on a mission. And as they drove across the country, we watched and we witnessed and we shared our feelings. And these feelings transcended our physical and emotional fields. and we made a soul connection. Do you think that they understood that? Do you think those on the side of the road understood that? Did this energy transmutate into a different kind of field strength? We found truckers around the world were repositioning themselves. They were interacting dynamically with a dynamic plasma. And so they had reference points. And with these reference points, they established a relationship. And once you have this relationship, then you can determine which way does the energy flow. And how effective is it? That is determined by susceptibility. And will that energy increase? What we call synergy, where 1 and 1 is more than 2. Only if there is a moral context. You cannot transcend the ranges without a moral context. That's a plasma rule. So when we're looking for verification and validation, what we see in the physicality is our point of existence. So we could say that the verification and validation is our physical manifestation. But there's a non-visible transmission. There's a non-visible transition. And there is a non-visible transmutation. This balancing of the energy fields is non-visible because there's no energy in motion. So in order to have this visibility, there has to be a confirmation. So if the confirmation is the destination, then what is the source? And so we can place limitations on that source. And when we choose to limit our source to our physical reality, then we have to steal, lie, cheat. But if we have a moral context, then we don't have to steal. We get what we need. We get what we need. And do you want confirmation? Every one of us has seen a hole in our gants. Where did that come from? How did that manifest physically? Who did that? Do you believe it? Or is there a soul in there? And if there's a soul in there, we know from our experience that the energy fields extend even beyond. And how far do they go? I don't know. How big is large? So what we do understand is points of conflict. So if points of conflict come together, the energy doesn't disappear. The energy has to deflect. So this is true in all cases, even in war. And we don't need to look far. Well, yeah, we do. If you look into outer space, you see that when two forces come together, they create a maggrav. But if that maggrav is either increasing or decreasing, in other words, that energy is coming or leaving, that this energy has to go somewhere. It has to keep coming. It's always in motion. You can't stop. You can't just grab onto it and delay. You have to keep it going. And this is where you create the different dimensions. So in our physicality, we like to resolve these energies through different competitions. So sports is one of the ways we do it. Business is another kind of competition, isn't it? Or how about a competition for bodybuilding? Someone who is overcompensated, someone who is overcommitted to bodybuilding. Or a beauty queen, someone who is overcommitted to beauty. Or dating as a competition. That's kind of strange. Or poker. How about poker? Who's the best liar? What kind of competition is that? And what is your reward? And of course, there's war. Are there really any winners in war? Well, there must be, because we have war. We have witnessed war throughout our history. So all of these competitions are actually kind of a conflict resolution. And so this is the limiting factor, where these conflict resolutions end up as killing, as jealousy, or kingship. These are all physical limitations to our moral growth, our moral maturity. And so we become preoccupied with superficiality. If you don't have the substance, then you have to sell the sizzle, right? If you don't have the steak, then you have to make a good-looking hamburger, right? And if you can't do what you need to do, then you fight it. So we call that anti-gravity, or we call it antimatter. The success of this convoy stemmed from the fact that they did something somehow that was extremely positive, pro-freedom. They were pro-freedom. How many of us go through life saying, I don't want to do that. I don't know what I want, but I don't want that. And why is that? Because that's the choice that's presented. So you lose your creativity. What are my choices? Well, my choice is A, B, C, or D, all of the above. Who decided on those choices? Are you sure there's no E or F? So when you're looking at the various choices and introducing a new choice, pro-freedom, guess what happened? Guess what happened? We had a matter-gen state of plasma energy. You couldn't touch it, you couldn't see it. But boy, oh boy, could you ever feel it. And the tears were rolling. The convoy was rolling, the tears were rolling. That's right. So the emotional state affected the physical state. And we were transcending between the two states all the time. Were the people aware? So when we look at our objectives, we need to practice. We need to practice hitting the target. Well, obviously one of the ways is to hit the bullseye or set up a goal and we can keep score, or we can have opinions and just judge things, or we can fake it and just deflect the attention, or one of the things we could do is just wake up to the reality. And the reason is because our reality seems to be suspended in our physicality. So most of us can go through life and maybe we ask the question, how did we get here? Or where do we go from here? And when we can't get the answer, we just occupy ourselves with something else. So we kind of go through life without answering that question. So we become, in fact, self-consumed. Because if we can't see it, we don't recognize it. But the fact of the matter is that we can send balls of energy to others. And when we do that, that causes us to be consumed. So we can do this mentally, and because that requires an energy, then that diminishes our physical energy. We can likewise receive this energy mentally, and we can absorb it. So you as a star athlete is adored by the public. So you absorb that energy. You as an abused spouse take all this abuse and absorb it. And you get to be sick. The physical manifestation is an illness. So this energy, we can become self-consumed by giving it, as in leaking like water leaking out of a tap. Or we can become self-consumed by absorbing this energy from a conditioned giver, a conditioned provider. Remember, the universe is unconditional. So when we give an idea, let's say we give an idea like a tumbleweed. We don't just give it out to one. We broadcast. And we cannot force someone to accept that idea. We can only give that idea. That is the plasma interaction. The receiver has the option to absorb it or to create a barrier. So that is on the receiver. So if a giver of an idea combines with a receiver of an idea, then the two share the idea. So sometimes we say we like to bounce the ideas around. So one gives an idea, I don't quite like that. The other gives an idea as an alternative, I don't quite like that. So as you keep bouncing these ideas, you try and find a common denominator. And so this is what happens. This is how you make a connection. So one of the ways you make a connection is when the higher energy feeds to the lower energy. Maybe someone is more forceful, they give an order. So they would give that energy. But if the two plasmas are equal, then they have to share the energy. So they become part of the team, right? So despite the fact that they are individual, they work together on common ground. But you're only looking at the two dimensions because we're missing something. Energy is always in motion. So there's energy coming in and energy going out. So despite the fact that any two of these make a connection, all of them together are making a connection, but all of them together are carrying energy. It comes in, goes around, and goes out. And from the point where it comes in, when you drop a stone in the water, it has a ripple effect in the water. And there's a small circle in the middle where the stone drops. And as the waves go out, the circle gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So each connection then therefore also has a different field strength. To maintain this field strength, each connection has to have a magnetical and a gravitational force field. Because first of all, there has to be a connection. That's the maggrav. Then the energy has to come in, right? So when it comes in, that's gravitational. And when it goes out, that's magnetical. So the collective of this entire picture is a maggrav. And that each individual component is a maggrav. and the interaction of each individual component with another is also a maggraph. And how strong this connection is determines the strength of the flow and determines also the direction of the flow. So things can change. And now we know what contiguous means. So there may not be a shoulder-to-shoulder connection. So between Hawaii and the United States is a lot of water. Between Alaska and the United States is Canada. So Hawaii and Alaska are part of the United States. And so there is no direct connection, but there is a contiguous connection. So we can see in physicality that there are contiguous connections. And plasma works that way. But, we seem to think what we call garbage in, garbage out. So in other words, when we have this connection, one tumbleweed can come in and one tumbleweed can go out. That's assuming that there's no other connection. That's assuming that there are no other plasma fields. It is also assuming that the garbage that came in is the garbage that goes out. Not only. There are other factors. There are other connections. There are other things at play. And the determination of if these things are factors is determined by the plasma, if it interacts or if it creates a barrier. If this is true in physicality, if this is true with the pea stone, then this must be true with the rest of the universe. And because there is no direct connection, then this connection with the universe is a contiguous connection. And because of this contiguous connection, it feeds us knowledge. And how we manifest this knowledge is determined by our awareness. So we can see how these independent truckers come together as a convoy. The convoy is a continuous connection, but there are no chains between the trucks. Each truck is independent. But all of these trucks are interdependent. And all of these trucks are connected through a contiguous connection. how self-consuming is it? That's the question. So let's look at what happens. Space energy goes through various paths. So we start with the PM ticks. They come in, go around, or just pass on through. That's how we can maintain a field, any field, whether it is an electron, whether it is the Earth, or whether it is the sun. If this field force is gravitational, then the energy comes in. And as that gravitational field gets stronger, more energy comes in. Right? If the field was weaker and the energy came in, when the field gets stronger, more energy has to still come in. Nothing has changed except the strength of the binding attraction. And when you have this binding attraction, then you have a creation of physicality. How do you know this? When you look at the periodic table of elements, you find that the mass of each element becomes stronger. It becomes more binding. It becomes more physical. So when you bring in more and more energy, it keeps coming gravitationally. Now, what happens if you're elevating? Well, now there's an excess of energy and it goes out. And if this energy goes out, it sets up a condition where more energy will come in. I thought we said binding was more energy coming in. Binding is more energy coming in and being retained physically. Elevating energy paths have more energy coming in because more energy is going out. And it doesn't discriminate. It goes out in different places. It's broadcast all over. So the creation of the magrav is the binding of energy. The maintenance of the magrav can be binding or elevating. So if one is sharing ideas and multiple are accepting the ideas, they all become witnesses. So what comes into question? What is the nature of the idea? So if it is a self-serving idea, then it hardens to physicality. And if it is stealing energy from others, then it also hardens the emotionality. And if you are the instigator of this binding process, that's your problem. If you are the witness to this, now you have a problem. Are you cooperating? Are you a co-conspirator? Are you complicit? You are the witness. So someone swept the problem under the carpet and you seen them do it. You can just, get along by going along, or you become the witness. You have to do something. In our society, this becomes a very difficult thing because of the physical limitations that we have put on our morality. These are our soul limitations. When you violate universal laws, the only way that you can do this is to disconnect from the soul. So we have a choice. We can connect physically to physical things. We can connect emotionally to emotional things. Or we can connect physically to emotional things. And then obviously there's a fourth choice. You can connect emotionally to physical things. In all of these cases, it is possible to do this without connecting to the soul. So if we say that the going along and getting along is within the range of being born to when we die, then that becomes our emotion of presence. And our emotion of presence is based on the emotion of the past and our witness. If our witness accepts the emotion of the past and manifests itself into the emotion of the presence, that will create the emotion of the future. And so what we have there is a certain kind of inertia. And that inertia is based on witnessing a crime. So as far as the universe is concerned, the universe will set up a barrier. The universe will morally not allow itself to be a coexistent witness. So if you are in a self-serving mode, stealing energy from others, from a universal standpoint, you will become very lonely. And this loneliness will breed a certain kind of mistrust. The universe doesn't operate that way. The universe operates on trust. And what we need to do is to become aware that we have to trust in the moral witnessing of our activity. Because the immoral activity is not only limiting our presence on this planet, but is limiting our presence in the universe. And not only, but it is limiting our soul. Because the energy that we're drawing is the energy that we're stealing. and whether we are the instigator of the crime or the witness to the crime, it's the same thing. So we have to learn how to navigate. We have to change your point of view. We have to learn some skills. We have to understand the power of our soul and its position. We have to change our schemes where, yeah, you know what? We lost our income. We lost our ability to be providers in the physical plane of this planet. But that's not how the universe works. And so this is where we have achieved the success, because now what we've done is we have become witnesses to the confirmation of our assumption. You see, the ignorant cannot be insulted, cannot be embarrassed. So the soul knows. The soul carries the energy, and it exchanges the energy with the rest of the universe. And the subject is more complex than that, because each of us has our own flavor and our field strength. And so to understand how energy is exchanged, 1 + 1 is more than 2. And so there is a soul sequencing. So we have to understand there's a soul of the sun. There's a soul of the earth. And we, as a man, we have a soul. Once that soul is in this field, then that soul will interact with the soul of the earth. And now we get a chance to attract the soul of the body. And so when we have the soul of the body interacting with the soul of the earth, now we manifest into physicality. And is physicality a sin? Well, some people, when they discuss this from a spiritual standpoint, say yes. But now we can say scientifically that this has to do with the conservation of magnetic fields. In either case, there's a relationship. And in either case, there's a seeking of a balance. And this balance in either case is a balance of the magnetical and gravitational field forces. So when you take these two sciences, the science of physics and the science of spirituality, and you bring them together, and you add the plasma science to the knowledge, now you understand manifestation. And so whichever field that you're creating, when two fields come together, that is a manifestation. And it's the plasma feeding that leads to this manifestation. So we find there's a plasmatic reality and a physical reality. But whichever reality is achieved, that is the form artifact of the manifestation. So the instigator for the form artifact is the emotion of presence. The emotion of presence is a form artifact of the energy in motion. The physical reality is the witness of the emotion of presence. Flippantly, we say we want to get back to normal. That's not going to happen. The majority is what's normal. And the majority seek freedom and emancipation. The universe is the majority, and the universe is normal. It's the earth that seeks freedom and emancipation. And we have now become aware, and the opportunity is there. The vision enhancement unit is there to soothe the pain of the witness. We cannot choose what we witness. We can choose how we navigate. Understand that the plasma is a kind of energy state. There are different energy states. They are all important. And this is what's important today. To understand how we go from PM ticks to field interaction. All of these different field strengths in the transition. Each field strength being a transmission level. The movement from field to field being a transition. The manifestation being a transmutation. So it's not that it's man-made, that's the problem. It's man's role in what is made is the problem. Are we the instigator of the crime? Are we the witness to the crime? Same thing. Can we change? If we understand that the energy binding causes us to be witness to self-consumption. So when we witness this self-consumption at the expense of others, we become part of the abuse. We become party to the loosh harvesting. We become dysfunctional from the morality of the universe. And as we stand at the gates of hell, we have to understand that the burden is eternal. The universe functions with ethics because the universe is a creator. The universe is a giver. And when you become a universal functionary, you also become a giver. And that giving has to be unconditional. And it's not something that you do on Sunday or on Wednesday at 3 o'clock. It's something that is eternal. You do it all the time. The peace dome is manifest throughout the universe. But there's an emotional transformation problem on this planet. And it comes down to the point where we don't understand the difference between the precursor of the plasma and the post-amino acid state, which is the physical manifestation. So now that we've become aware, at what point does it change? Each of us will come to that point. Each of us will cross that bridge of knowing, because knowing is not enough. Connecting is not enough. Crossing the bridge, that gets you going from here to there. And with the plasma science, we have more options, because now we can better understand how the universe really works, and that we are part of that. And we are now witnesses to that. And this is a very, very good thing. And as they said to the police yesterday, when you talk to your grandchildren, tell them on which side of history you are on when you witnessed the change. The change is where we now know we are operating in an earth space, and we can do this physically, or we can do this in a plasmagen state. But there is an outer space. So if there's an earth space and an outer space, then there is an in-between space, the inner space. And so when we all want to be champions, the champions are a conflict resolution. And in that conflict resolution, there's a filtering process. And so we judge which is the champion. And morality is not part of that. Morality is missing when we discuss this kind of conflict resolution. And in 48 hours, we will have a different kind of conflict resolution. Not a conflict of killing, but a conflict of fulfilling our dreams and beyond our dreams by increasing our schemes. And understanding that there is a difference between the relationship of our physicality and inner space, and the difference between our physicality and outer space, and that we can transcend different field strengths. And they don't have to be directly connected. They can be contiguous, which is why the Universal Council is not earthbound. If it was the Universal Council, then it would be the Earth Council. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute teaching on plasma science. We're calling all Earth patriots, both near and far. There's a World Peace Treaty. Sign it. Sign it with a pen. Sign it with your heart. Sign it with your soul. We're all going through a physical and emotional transformation. And we are all in a position here, right now, to go and be moral witnesses to a moral change. And this is how we understand the universal language of freedom, by gaining more and more insight. And as we gain more and more insight, the universe will provide. That's why the plasma science needs to be delivered in exchange for peace on Earth. Welcome to the outer space age. Thank you all for listening and translating and all the work in the background. This is the end of the lesson. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Alex, for another wonderful presentation. Spot on, I would say. Alenka, how did he do with the slowness or quickness of it? I think he did rather well today. It stretched out the presentation a bit, but I think he's right on there. Okay, we'll take that as a yes. And let's give Alex a minute to warm his tea, catch his breath, warm his toes, check a few things. And while we're waiting for Alex, hopefully everyone has written down one question or has an idea. I have a couple questions I think we can ask, but by the looks of it, I don't see anyone here for the first time. If there is anyone here for the first time, would you announce yourself, maybe your first name and where you're from? Okay, I think everyone has been here once, at least once before, and so many people have been here many times. And it's the souls who are bringing us together. As they know, there's more work that we're going to be doing in the very near future connected with the Keshe Foundation. And I think our energies would be used better there than maybe making a widget or a meal for someone, but one never knows. We all serve in different ways. And of course, we have to keep the bills paid or what have you. But they'll hopefully in the near future, as we start to move into this technology, there'll be less bills and less of that for all of us. It affects the energy, the health, the agriculture, and of course, space. Alex, I was going to ask you about PM ticks. I think I know what it is. And can PM ticks be given off as well as absorbed by a plasma? And
Definitely.
These are sort of fields or rays that would come off a plasma or would enter a plasma. Would we call that? And maybe you can just, I couldn't even pronounce it in the beginning, or I didn't know how. Plasmatic magnetic fields, PM ticks. And of course, when we say plasmatic magnetic, that magnetic contains the gravitational and the magnetical field. Is that correct?
Well, that's the big difference, you see. When we look at the conventional science, they were looking at the direction of flow as being a one-way street. And, you know, in the plasma science, it's a two-way street. So if it's a two-way street, that energy has to come from somewhere. So whatever it is has to have that balance, right? So the key to this whole understanding is to understand that the energy cannot be stopped. And we know this in our physicality because we keep producing batteries, and batteries discharge. So we are unable to create a well, you have a container that can hold water, and water flows. So we try and relate electricity to water, but we cannot contain electricity. So the problem is that we don't have a source. In order to maintain that source, you have to have both a magnetical and a gravitational. Why? Because the maggrav cannot be stationary. It has to keep moving. So if the energy is going to stay within the maggrav, then it has to rotate. Then if the energy is going to sustain that maggrav, energy has to come in. Well, if that energy comes in, then either this maggrav is going to grow in size, or it is going to give off energy. So you and I are maggravs. And so we absorb energy and we give off energy. Depending on the kind of energy that we absorb affects our physical manifestation.
So when I first came to the foundation, I thought that a maggrav condition was a balance condition, but that's not correct whatsoever. Is it?
No, a maggrav is 100%, it's a balance condition.
Yeah, but if the sun is a maggrav, the earth is a maggrav, you're a maggrav, are we all in balance? I thought if we were in balance and there was no movement of fields, then nothing would be created. If everything was in a maggrav or a balance condition, would there be no interaction of fields or rays?
Well, exactly. So this is why the science is having problems, because they become either a participant or an observer. Well, if you're going to be an observer in the universe, you have to be in the universe. If you're not in the universe, where are you?
Yes, even though we're on the planet, we are in the universe, aren't we?
Right. Yes. Yes. So this is the fallacy of the science. Right. So this is when this fallacy becomes pointed out. And, you know, most of us are asking this question for years, you know, why is it not resolved? Oh, well, we don't know. We have all these theories, you know, we have big bangs and strings and, you know, worms and stuff like that. And they're all theories. And none of them, you only need to disprove it once. You disprove it once, it's no longer a theory. Okay, that's the key. So the plasma science has not been disproved at all.
So how about the difference between, and for some who may not want to ask, the plasmatic magnetic gravitational fields and the electromagnetic gravitational fields? Do you want to
Okay,
highlight
well,
that for a moment? Just so people could see the difference? I think I understand the difference where the plasma, we're working with the fields of the atom, and the other way we're vibrating electrons in the matter state, so to speak?
That's correct. That's correct. So if you look into outer space, science has said there's nothing there, right? It's the big nothingness. And, this was like, for me personally, this was always a problem, I didn't understand it. And because I was not a scientist, I didn't dare question it, right? So we feel unqualified to question it. But so science could actually get away with putting a hypothesis together that didn't make any sense at all. Let me just give you one common example. They say, oh, well, it took years to discover the wheel. Really? All you have to do is fall down the side of the mountain once. And as you roll down the hill, you will realize that you could walk down the mountain or roll down the mountain. You invented the wheel right then and there. And it only took, a few seconds. So we seem to keep saying, oh, this is what our history is, or this is how long it took. And now what we're realizing in the plasma science, wait a second, you can make a cup of life in 30 minutes. Mr. Kesh has made a video of that. Oh, so maybe it would take an hour, or maybe it'd take a day, whatever. It's not going to take 2,000 years. So, but the thing is, we didn't know what it was. So it would be like going to let's say someone in a time machine that is, from living off the land, and they don't even have electricity, and then you give them a computer. Whoa, what are they going to do with the computer? They may use it to, prop up a table. Oh, my table's not level. I'll just stick the computer under the leg here, and now my table will be level. So you've got the computer, but you don't know what it is. And now as I look around, I have been creating GANs all my life. I just didn't know it was GANs.
And you've been converting as well matter into ganses.
Exactly. Right? So now, as we become aware, and one thing leads to another. Well, if this, then that, and if this, then that. So you, one by one, and you've been following my classes, what I've tried to do is one by one, get rid of a lot of these misconceptions. And these misconceptions are well entrenched. And this is where our problem is. We are not confident enough to challenge these, what I'm going to call lack of understandings, right? Because someone said years ago, well, this is the way it is. Okay, how about this? He who has the most toys at the end wins. Wins what? And if he had no toys when he was born, and he can't take the toys when he died, what's the purpose of accumulating all of these toys in between? He wins. Well, good. Go down to the trophy shop and buy him a trophy and, put it on his headstone.
And it's the same with nanocoating, isn't it? We've been nanocoating all of our lives, except we didn't know we were nanocoating things. We were opening up atomic structures. When man discovered fire, he started using it to open up the atomic structure of the foods, but he didn't really know what he was doing.
Yeah, so let's look at an observation here. You take a wooden match and you burn it. You know that the match like shrivels up, right? And so there's a destruction there. But if you take a forest and you burn it down, the regrowth of that forest is much more rapid. So if it's destruction, how come it's beneficial to the growth rate of the forest? So what you have to do is come to the belief and the trust that if God created the universe, then nothing that he created was bad. Because let's put it this way, someone created a car. Would you say a car is good or a car is bad? Well, if you get in the car and you go from here to the grocery store and buy groceries and then carry the groceries back home, you'd say the car is good. But if you run someone over, then you say, oh, well, the car is bad. So what you have here is an abdication of responsibility. Oh, no, I was the driver. And, you know, the car was good because I was the driver to pick up the groceries, but I was the driver and I ran someone over. It's the car's fault. That's not the way it works. You have the responsibility. You're the driver. So whether it's good or bad is not dependent on the manufacturer of the car. It's dependent on the driver. And what is, let's put it this way. There is an ethics in terms of the manufacturing. So, you know, we can see this with light bulbs, for instance. There are, let's put it this way. Some manufacturing goes into building in obsolescence, right? Because they're afraid of losing their job. So by creating a market demand artificially. So this is a conditioned exchange. You create something, actually, Lotus was absolutely famous for this. In the racing cars, the cars would be as light as possible,
Right.
so that they could race. And if the race was 100 miles, the car would break down at 102 miles. And they would calculate this down to the, you know, to the mile. And if for some reason the race was extended, then the car would break down before it crossed the finish line. And, you know, that was kind of a comedy. But this was the advantage that they had. So this was a conditioned type of thing. Then there are others who build things and they last for years, such as the, what about the Roman causeways? You know, they have been around for years, 2,000 years, maybe even more. I don't know, long time. And yet we have, I was working with one construction crew there, and they were building a bridge, and that bridge had a 10-year life expectancy. Can you imagine? Where's the ethics? Where's the responsibility? So it becomes a make work project, right? We don't need make work projects. We have too much work as it is. One of the reasons we're going to have this explosion of employment is because we have made such a wholesale mess of this planet. I mean, take a look at some of the aerial photographs of northern Canada, and you can see the scars. And this is possible because mining companies have been enjoying a special privilege. They could make an environmental mess without the obligation to clean it up. I don't know about you, but when I was a young boy, if I made a mess of my room, I had to clean it up. But, you know, everybody's got their own ways, right? So what is the end product? We have what we have, and we deserve what we have. And we see things, we are witness to things that are not functioning properly. and there's not much we can do about it. Well, that is changing. We are becoming empowered. We are starting to tap into the energy of the universe. And the energy of the universe is abundant. It is unconditional. You provide the pattern, you get the energy. Did I say physical pattern? Did I say plasmatic pattern? No, you just provide the pattern, you get the energy. So if you only depend on energy that you receive from its physical manifestation, you are not only seeing half the picture, you're probably seeing less than 1% of the picture. So we are on the verge of a very, very exciting journey, because the rest of it is all going to open up. And, you know, for a lot of people, they have trepidation because they are going to be firmly planted in midair and they won't know if they're backwards or upside down. And that's unnerving. But one thing for sure, the limitations of their existence between being born and dying has now been extended to being before being born and after dying. So now, don't you feel better knowing that after you die, that you can manifest into another reality? And wouldn't it be better if that reality that you manifest into was more than what you came with? The more being, more energy, more capability, more knowledge, more awareness, more universal made functionality, as opposed to man-made money functionality or man-made toys functionality. You can't take the money or the toys with you, but you can take the universal energy with you. And that is because of the nature of the PM ticks. As you travel, you go through gradients. You pick up one, and in order to pick up one, you have to drop one. And that's how you move.
I'm trying to think of a question with these drivers up in Canada and everything, how they've created so many emotions and we're linked to it. But if we didn't see the pictures, our soul would know, but would we have the same or similar emotions? I'm just trying to, they've created a lot of emotions. We know that emotions are energy in motion or like a field force, but I'm trying to think of a question related to the emotions that they've created. And we know they've touched the people in Canada as well as each other. But would we know about it if we didn't see any pictures? The souls would know, but would it have the same interaction with us? Or is there something about seeing it with the eyes that sort of solidifies or?
Well, of course, Mark, because this is how we navigate through our physicality, isn't it? We are over dependent on our physicality. That's why you have beauty contests and bodybuilding contests, right? So the confirmation visually is a physical confirmation. But the thing is, just because it's capable for you to see it doesn't mean that you see it. In other words, if the TV is not on, does that mean the show doesn't go?
Yeah, I'm sure there's more than what I get a glimpse of on the television or on the internet, for sure.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that just because you don't turn on the TV doesn't mean it's not there. You know?
Oh, agree.
To you, when you turn on the TV, oh, there it is. Okay, good. Well, thank you very much, broadcast station, for being, attuned to my tuning in. Thank you for broadcasting at the same time when I tune in. It would be kind of inconvenient if you weren't broadcasting when I tuned in, because then when I tune in, I wouldn't hear anything, right? So the broadcaster broadcasts all the time. The tuner tunes in whenever he wants to. But if you don't tune in, then, how do you listen to it? But what causes you to tune in? That's the question you're asking, isn't it? So you come to an event and you say, hey, you know what? I was there. You were there. So what? I wasn't there. What difference does it make? Well, what difference does it make? Is it because I was a witness to yesterday and I see the manifestation today? And now I understand what the consequences are. Will I continue? If I continue without changing, then I become a co-conspirator, an accomplice. And you say, well, the problem is too big for me. And it is true. How many times have I heard, oh, you understand we're in North America. So you say, oh, well, the problems that are happening in the, Middle East or in Asia or whatever, it doesn't affect us. Well, it does now. It absolutely does. So when you see the people crossing the bridge in Canada, and you see the bridge crossing you see the people.
I think Alenka opened her mic to tell us we're going along too fast, or maybe it just got opened inadvertently.
You see the people crossing the bridge in Canada, and then you see the people crossing the bridge in Canberra, Australia. A million people didn't even make the news. Okay, so the news, the media, is a witness, but they're not reporting. So as a witness, they are not reporting the news, they are making the news. If they are making the news and they are a witness to the news, then they are a co-conspirator. It's automatic. You see what I'm saying? They become complicit in the crime.
Paulo, you have your mic open. Would you like to say something? Or I'll mute it for you. Paulo? Okay. Let me mute that.
So what can you do about your situation? There are now, if you enlist the services of the Universal Field Forces, this is what you know. One field change, one elevation is an order of magnitude. So, my friends like to go to the racetrack, and they would take their vehicles, which they could do, 100 kilometers an hour on the street. They'd go to the racetrack and they'd be going 200 kilometers an hour. Well, that's double. Imagine if they could go one order of magnitude. They'd be going 1,000 kilometers an hour. So someone comes to you and says, oh, you know what? My car can go twice as fast as your car. Isn't that impressive? No, sorry. My car can go 10 times faster. That's impressive. And if we work on that, then we can go 2 orders of magnitude. What is that? That's 10 times 10. That's 100 times. That's impressive. So what are you impressed about? What are you impressed about?
Well, I'm impressed that they created a lot of emotions, and apparently it's reaching out. These fields are going out because their intentions are so strong. And Mr. Kesh has been saying in the last couple of workshops, this is the reason I concentrated on emotions.
But so what I'm saying is that the emotion is an order of magnitude stronger than the physicality.
Oh, yeah, many magnitudes. Yeah.
Yeah. So now there is the plasma science in action. These truck convoys are plasma science in action. Imagine if they could catch on to that. Imagine if they became aware of that.
Great point. Yes.
Imagine if, if KFTV was a little bit more dynamic, especially, well, it doesn't matter which country. You know how many streamers, YouTube streamers are on the street? There's dozens of them that keep bumping into each other. You can see the picture of one YouTube streamer on another guy's stream. It's the funniest thing. And then they run a split screen and they show each other talking to each other.
You
It's
stream me
marvelous.
and I stream you.
Yeah, okay. And there's no commentary. They are witness to an event. And they could be doing anything else, but they're doing this. Why? Because this is an important event. And has this an event like this, of this significance, happened before? Yes, it has. His daddy invoked the War Measures Act in the 1970s. Okay, so there's a precedent. The difference is, in this case, our rights as individuals has been obliterated. There is no legal standing. So those who are on the street as witnesses know this. But they have done a very, very smart thing. And that is they have endorsed freedom, love, and peace. So what started out as, hey, you took my livelihood away, became oh, we want to free the country. And no, we don't want to go back to normal. We have never been normal. Normal is when we unite with the universal community. That's normal.
Great. Well, I'm giving from my soul to all parties involved, that there can be a great, beautiful resolution, whether it comes today or tomorrow or next week, whatever. I think these forces are in action. The fields have been created and the fields are moving and affecting.
Well, there is
others.
a resolution. There is a resolution, because the peaceful demonstration as a apparent conflict has been resolved with violence, which means that the hand has been opened up. You know, how many times did Mr. Kesh talk about the 5+1 where they opened up the hands? Well, the hand has been played. We now know the rules of engagement. The rules of engagement are that there are no rules. We don't have a parliament. We don't have standing, and they're confiscating assets. So what does that tell you? Are we going to go back to normal? You mean to have the possibility of that happening again? Do you have the trust in that? I think the trust is broken. The society is broken. And isn't it ironic that this is happening 72 hours before Tuesday?
Yes, yes. No coincidences.
I think we could take the Canadian Universal Enhancement Fleet and just maybe spray Ottawa with some GANs.
Well, I agree with you totally. That would have been marvelous. So now, how do we connect with these organizers? I think Dean was saying in the at the beginning of today's program
Yes.
that he went in with a T-shirt and he.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what would happen if we changed the dynamics there and increased that by an order of magnitude?
And again, translate that into working with your own reactor with your soul and your GANs that's within you. And if all those drivers had that understanding, it might make a difference. I think it would.
Well, of course it would. And these drivers now are having an existential crisis. The reason they came was because they're out of work and they have to pay for their rigs. So if their rigs sit in the driveway and rust, or they sit in Ottawa and rust, same difference.
Or they sit in quarantine for 2 weeks while they can't drive.
Same difference.
The next thing I heard of was they're going to be doing a worldwide strike starting on Monday. So everybody stay home, don't go to work for a week. That's what I was hearing.
Yep, that's one of the ideas that is going forward. But, again, this is a physical answer. And we now, as knowledge seekers, know the power of the plasma reactors. And what we really need to do is each of us individually have to work out a plan to be able to contribute in our own way, within our own capabilities. And these plasma fields will link up contiguously through the plasma dome. It will happen. So we have 9 universal enhancement units and 12 more coming this week. That'll be 21.
And it would be nice, as Mr. Kesh said, give me an hour a day for 7 days and I'll change your nation. It would be
Exactly.
beautiful to see Mr. Kesh on the Canadian television for 1 hour a day for 7 days. And I think the entire nation will change.
Those units are coming to Canada, Alex?
No, none are coming
Arizona.
to Canada.
Oh,
Arizona. Well, no. They are coming to Iran, US, and Austria.
right. Okay. Thank you.
And then
There
more
will-
as the days and weeks, months go by.
Yeah, well, they're queuing up, right? Because you understand jealousy, right? So, you have a universal enhancement unit. Well, I want one too.
And of course, the star formations in the fields and the interaction of these units together, no matter where they are on the world, is going to start to create these fields of enhancement for everyone, I think. Plus the
Yeah.
universal community and the fields from the universe coming in to change our understanding.
Yeah, and the Brazilian team has proven that over and over.
Yes, Mr. Kesh said how beautiful it was to see the work that's going on in Brazil every week when Raphael does his report.
Well, this is going to happen in all the other countries as well. This is why I'm saying you can't go back. You know, Schrodinger's cat is out of the bag. All right, you're never going to put that cat back in the bag. So you're going to have to deal with it.
Would someone else like to ask a question, perhaps? And don't think your question is silly or at a lower level. I think any question that's related to the science and the foundation, emotions, the soul, Alex is prepared to answer.
I was wondering what the best GANs mixture is for agriculture.
I think it's proprietary, Mr. Kesh. At this point, it's only shared between the governments. I know they've documented it, he said, but it wasn't available to the public. I mean, we've seen some of the independent farmers in China and so on do some work and have fantastic results. Gianni and others. I've just used CO2 and Cup of Life 1, but the actual real formula, I think, is at this point, well, a couple of years ago, he said it was proprietary and the studies would only be shared intergovernmentally at this time. But you can do quite well just figuring it out on your own. There are some Ganses in the store as well for plant enhancement, and that may be a proprietary formula, not sure.
Thank you, Mark.
There is a point I'd like to add. The whole purpose of the plasma is to set up an energy field. And then that's your pattern. So from that pattern, you can give and take energy. The mistake a lot of people make is we are conditioned to pill popping. In other words, I have a problem, give me a pill to solve that problem. And so they're using the GANs, if you will, as a relief for a problem. They are not using it as a way of life. And I've seen this so many times. We've all produced plasma water, and you give it to someone and say, okay, well, my problem has been resolved. Thank you very much. Now I don't need the plasma water. Well, you know, why not? You know, what did you stop living? So that's the point. You're using it as a remedy. You're not using it as a way of life. So if you understand that, and if you understand that you are plasma inside, so what are you feeding? If you take something from plasma, convert it to physicality, and then digest that, which is converting it back to plasma, you're a make work project. But if you take the plasma energy and you absorb that, then you're taking a direct connection. So once you start to become aware of that, and as we increase our knowledge, then we understand how to go through this transformation. And this transformation is right now in front of us, where we are getting only, it's estimated 80% of our energy from the universe. And we are supplementing it with our physical energy, which is of a lower order of energy, lower order of magnitude. And if we supplement that with the plasma energy, which is a higher order of magnitude, then we will have plasma energy supplementation from the universe and from our plasma reactors. So some of us will just go direct. And this is a concept that I have not been aware of. I've only been recently aware of it, just like all of you. And so I have to absorb that. I have to understand that better. My being has to accept that and react to it better. So it's like, you know, it's gee whiz, you come from the tropics and you go to the snow-covered country, you have to put on a winter coat. You cannot change that rapidly because you're in the physical manifestation. So the physical solution is a slow solution for a slow energy transfer. But if we go into the plasma state, then we can speed that up by an order of magnitude. This is what's so cool. So we are all, you know, habitual creatures. So, you know, we have our comfort zones and we don't like being taken out of our comfort zone. Well, the pandemic dividend has been that we have all been taken out of our comfort zone. And we have seen that a system, a social system that we have set up to, shall we say, mitigate the fallout from these type of effects, detrimental effects, is not there, has been missing in action, or has in fact been counterproductive. So in other words, it's not just that, you know, we have a pandemic, but you're locked down. You've lost your business. You know, you can't go here, you can't go there. Well, you know, wait a second, we started with pandemic and now, you know, we've gone to this other extreme. And so, you know, how did we get there? Well, because all the checks and balances that we put in place, which were physical, have failed us. But was this the plan? Was it planned obsolescence? Was it planned failure? So I'm not making commentary on that. What I'm saying is each of us is a last man standing. So each of us has the capability of turning our life around. You know, it's a funny saying, you know, today is the first day of the rest of your life. Well, it is. And tomorrow, guess what? It's the first day of the next rest of your life. So every day is a new beginning. But in the plasma science, the awareness, the knowledge is a new beginning. So now, well, I look back in my life and say, oh, geez, you know, I was angry when I learned about this at the age of 40. You know, so how does someone feel who's 60? Or how does someone feel who's 20? Or do they say, oh, you know, that's an old man's game. We're not interested in that. You know, we like our TikTok and our, you know, tweeting. We don't want to change. We're happy with this. You know, just make sure I got nice running shoes. It's what you deem important is strictly up to you. And I say, when important is not important, then nothing's important. And the way I see it, my own personal opinion, we are in an existential crisis. And right now, yes, Tuesday is coming. Yes, Thursday is coming. Changes are coming. Universal reactors are coming. But you know what? In Canada, I would say no less than 18 million people are in an injured state.
And Jason was asking about the CO2 in the Cup of Life one. Yes, they are different. And I was just reading in the book where it shows here in the structure of the light that they have gravitated 6 different elements or I suppose, gases in the CO2 box. They're converting the methane gas into CH4. You're making some CH3 in there, which is energy before you, I guess it's a precursor to making the CH4. But I've never heard this, they've gravitated, it said. They attained 6 different elements in GAN state, each of which has its own color and can be seen, sample tubes, if they have been extracted from the system during its operation. So we know we have zinc oxide, CO2 GANs, CH3, CH4, oxygen is being released, and the plants love it. It's like plant food for, they love the CO2, the carbon dioxide, apparently. So they've gravitated 6 different elements in that CO2 box, and you can see
No.
pictures of it.
Not elements, molecules.
Okay,
Elements are in the physicality. They're not strong enough to maintain the combination, so they are distilled down to an elemental structure.
okay, let me read it to you. Up to this point, we have managed to attain 6 different elements in GAN state, each of which has its own color, as can be seen in the sample tubes. So you have some orange, some green, some yellowish, and some whitish. And another one is kind of a brown. There were 6 different vials here. You can see that on, well, in the Kindle. I'm not sure which page it's on.
So it's the terminology.
Yes,
So what we're talking about is plasmatic elements.
yes,
So,
GAN
so
state.
none of the ganses are like it. You don't get a carbon GANS, you get a CO2 GANS. Or you get a CH3 GANS. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the carbon is an element, the hydrogen is an element, oxygen is an element. But in the GANS state, they make combinations. So they become plasma elements.
But somehow they were able to extract 6 different GANSes out of the CO2 box.
Yes, because there's a carbon 10, carbon 12, carbon 14, and a carbon 16. So the field focus is carbon 12, which is the physical element of carbon. When you go from that focus point and say that focus point is the center of your infinity loop, right? When you go away from that, you see that it's not in focus. So those are your isotopes. So because each of these isotopes has a different field strength, you have created a different element.
And that was up to 2010, 6 different materials in GAN state, which have been gravitated by the system up to today. And that was May 1st, 2010. And as he said, with the cup number 1 of the cup of life, it would take us hundreds of years, man, to understand exactly what's going on in that cup. He said, we made it look simple because we designed it that way, but it's not simple. There's a lot
There was
going
a show
on.
there was a show on TV called Naked and Afraid, right? This is where they put 2 people in a forest somewhere, and they have to be resourceful, right? Well, say they are resourceful at, you know, creating fire, or resourceful at putting a shelter up or something like that. What would happen if they were resourceful at making a plasma reactor?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say, Jason, the CO2 would be just fine. And you can just test it on your house plants. It's everything the plant needs. And then I use the cup, number 1, the cup of life. And that seems to work. The plants love it. I don't use it every single day. I'll intermittently use it with the tap water. And it's the plasma water. I'm not putting the GANs in there.
I was told possibly you can use the cup too, but not spraying it directly on the leaves, just around the plants? Is that something that would be a wise thing to do
I haven't tried it.
for the soul energy sort of thing?
No, the cup number one is better connected to the soul of energy, soul energy. Cup number two is more to the physicality.
Right, but you wouldn't want to spray the cup 2 directly on the plants, or am I incorrect with that?
No, because the cup number two has some disinfecting properties.
Okay.
If you, I was talking about roadkill before, so the roadkill disappears in 9 days because the aerobic bacteria within the body converts to anaerobic bacteria. And so the aerobic bacteria contributes to protein development. The anaerobic bacteria contributes to protein digestion. So if you make it disinfected, then you kill the bacteria. You delay the
Okay.
process.
I see.
But if
Thank
you look in the store, you'll see some of the plant products that are available, and one of them is a greenish one. That could be a pesticide perhaps, or something along that line to repel them. I thought he said something about putting a little bit on top and a little on the bottom, but you'd have to double check that. But you can see some of these plant foods or plant enhancers in the store, as well as the ceramic cups, which have the material embedded in the ceramic.
So I would just like to contribute one thought to that process, and that is that a lot of these, what do you call them, parasites, they are attracted to weak fields. So if let's say a plant is dying, so they will go to that plant first. It's the same way that lions cull a herd of zebras, let's say, that they won't attack the strongest one, they'll attack the weakest one. So this is kind of a natural balancing process where you, cull, if you will, cull the process. So if you were to impart a plasma field, which is a field of creation, a field of higher energy, then it's just like the locusts and whatnot, they will leave the field. They are attracted to a decaying field. So the whole process of decaying is a form of creating gas. So what we say is when we take the food, which is a protein, and put it in our mouth, the moment it goes into our mouth, it goes into a plasma field, which creates it into a gas, right? So it's already broken down the protein. So this is what happens through decay. If a plant is weak, then it starts to decay. So it's already being digested. It's self-digesting. And so this would attract a pest. So
it's interesting you say that, because I had a friend that was using the plasma on his agriculture, and with that particular crop that he used it from the start, there was very little, if any, bugs or powdered mildew, etc. It was very interesting.
yeah, so you're creating an attraction or repulsion. It's as fundamental as it gets. So if we can, if we can identify our solutions based on those principles, we could pretty well figure anything out, given enough time and, given enough opportunity. Right now, as it stands, because of our social structure and everything that we're involved with, we're not given the time or the opportunity to do that. So it is through the Knowledge Seekers workshops that we are able to give ourselves this greater insight. So this is why we're not teaching specific practicalities. We're teaching concepts. So you have the insight to say, oh, well, if the energy is going that way, that's because it's giving. Well, who wants that energy? Well, you know, if you have something that is robbing that energy, then that's what you're feeding. So if you want to change that, don't feed what you don't want. Feed what you do want. It's, in other words, stop doing things that cause the problem and start doing the things that solve the problem. And you are the enabler.
And it's interesting, Fried put in the chat here, as I understand, a lot of Canadian freedom convoys are from the Sikh people. There must be some connection already, and I've actually seen a video where they were feeding people. I think they were cooking and they were saying, we're just here to support.
Yeah, they're truckers. They have the same mentality. They are independent, right? And then they have a vested interest, just like everybody else. But you do understand that Turban fellow is running one of the opposition parties, right? And if the founders of those opposition parties would see what they're doing today, they would rise up out of their graves and be quite angry. So you've gotten the, it's just, well, now you know how things work, okay? So we have a confirmation of how things work. We can't say, let me put it another way, and maybe this is a little bit more gentle. We had a former leader of the Conservative Party here complain that Parliament was shut down, so they could not cross-examine in question period the government and their intentions. So what? What difference would it make? You go and you ask your question, and it gets documented in the Hansard, which is the archive of the transcripts. And so what? Okay, so you ask your question, but nothing's going to change. So you're complaining, oh, you know, we don't have the right to question the government. And you are the government. So, you know, that doesn't make the difference. What makes the difference is the moral certitude. The morality is what's missing. And now everybody knows, and the whole world is witness to this.
Jason, did you get your question answered, or at least partially answered? Maybe Alex could open it up. Do you want
No,
to?
yeah, I think Jason just confirmed he did.
Okay, good.
I was on to Fried's point. That was whoever made that point.
Yeah, sorry, I was just reading in the chat, sorry.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. And then, so this is what I'm saying. To complain about anything is not enough. You need to complain about what's effective. And what's effective is the energy exchange. So we have people who are in genuine dire straits. We have people who are physically disabled or physically injured, and they are young. So they are contributing members of society, and they have been incapacitated. That has ramifications. So, you know, I'm just saying, what we are seeing is a broken system, and not just in this country, but every other country. And what we need to do is to elevate our energy levels to be more effective, to be more efficient. And the plasma energy is affording this possibility. All you have to do I'm telling you now, is sit down for a few minutes and think about your position today in the absence of the plasma science. And if that doesn't send shivers up your spine, then I don't know what will. For me personally, it is comforting to know that the creator is my benefactor. And he's not picking favorites. He doesn't discriminate that way. He broadcasts. Okay, it goes out everywhere. We all have the opportunity to elevate. There are no favorites. There's no betting. There's no competition. It's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And we are on the cusp. We are at the point to witness history at a very, very historical moment. I want to thank everybody who's allowed me to present today. I didn't mean to dominate this conversation, but the questions have been excellent. And I thank you all for hanging in here, because you will be asked where you were. And you need to be able to answer truthfully. Isn't that wonderful? Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who's been wanting to say something? Please feel free to open your mic. I'm going to play the last question Mr. Kesh took in the 420th. It's very simple and all of us can understand what he's saying there. Then I'll play the creation of the Universal Council. And then we'll end with Victor's tribute to Victor again. And of course, the final disclaimer. Go ahead,
May I
Salomia.
say something, Mark?
Yes, please, go ahead. No problem.
Do you remember last week when I put the wish to meet together? And that night, on my dream, but it was not dream because I was aware. I went to Linz. And there I have seen a dean and other person which I never see them and I never meet them. And we start to talk about enhancement units, body enhancement units, and especially fly, for the fly. And Mr. Kesh also appeared there, but it was in another sequence of the dream, if I may say like this, on a boat on the Danube. And he answered my question about how it's possible to fly. And he asked me if I can know to swim. I said no. Said, okay, look to this bird who is swimming and take lessons. So flying is the same like swimming. Anyway, it was my dream, and when I come back on my body, I had a body, green body. And this green body, light body, came on my physical body, and I wake up with this image in the morning. Anyway, it was
maybe you had a
good,
little algae
yeah.
on you from swimming, or plankton. But to me, it sounds like the souls were interacting. And
Yeah,
that's
of
why the
course.
soul showed you the faces, because you wouldn't know who it was interacting with unless the faces were shown to your brain.
Let's put again this wish, if you like, and say next week what it was possible for us to do. So I didn't meet in the sky, in the universe, I meet in space, but we meet in Linz. Okay, thank you.
Sounds like a very nice dream,
Yes,
but it wasn't dream. It sounds like it's the reality.
of course. Thank you very much.
Okay, if there's no one else, or would someone else like to come in here, I'm going to play, as I said, the last question Mr. Kesh took in the workshop from, coincidentally, a fellow named Mark. I think he's in Germany. And then the creation of the Universal Council, Victor's clip, his memorial, his tribute, and then the final disclaimer, and the meeting will end. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for sharing on the soul level, partially speaking, partially soul level, or just speaking.